I think, first of all, you also want to say, do you want to be an entrepreneur? Do you want to be a business operator? And those are two different things. And then most people think, oh, I want to create this business. And then all of a sudden, 5 years later, I'm going to have all these people working for me and I'm going to, right off to sunset, maybe sell a business. Before that, you have to have a culture, idea of building a brand, making sure that people understand the brand, people develop, and you have an idea on cost.
The content presented and discussed is purely intended to be general and educational in nature and should not be construed as specifically tailored investment, financial planning, tax, legal, psychological diagnosis, or other professional advice.
Hello. Thank you again for joining us for another session of Ask My Man Manny, where we go into a wide variety of subjects, things that are emotional, things that are financial, the cross-section between those things. And I have my special co-host, Dr. Abbey Durkin, on with us. Abbey, how's it going?
Hey, Manny, it is so great to be here. Thank you so much for having me on for another episode. And this topic absolutely deserves a part 2, man. It's a big one.
I really started to get into it. There is so much that has changed over like the last 50 years, right? So, thinking back to our grandparents, if they ran a business, they had employees. For most of us, who didn't own businesses, you went to work, you got a paycheck every 2 weeks. Perhaps you didn't think about entrepreneurship or some of the complications of it. But over years, there's been so much complexity to managing people, to working in a digital world, working with other people, and then social media, right? Social media is maybe 20 years old. And as long as, historically speaking, we've been doing business, social media seems like it should have been around for a long while, but it's only been 20 years. I got some things I want to talk about. I think they're going to be important. But when you think about, kind of going back to our last subject, about what is a service or product that has staying power, legitimacy, what's your thought process when you're evaluating a business?
Well, I tend to go for areas that are flexible. So there's this proverb. So if you guys don't know, I live in Tokyo, and we have so many sayings and so many proverbs. And there's one that comes from, I think it's China. And it was said when this individual was looking out over a bamboo forest after a typhoon had come through. And the individual had made a remark that the reed that bends in the wind survives the storm, whereas the strong oak crumbles. And I have thought about that throughout my life, because I tend to be very plan-oriented, very strategic. I make contingencies. I like to have things set, and I like to have an order and really ensure that they follow through. But when I was an entrepreneur, I didn't realize that mindset was actually a little bit toxic, because it got in the way of me being flexible. And I had to let a lot of things go, a lot more things go than I ever thought. And so when I'm evaluating what am I going to invest my energy in, what am I going to invest my finances in, it has to be taken with this really much bigger picture than I was prepared for mentally when I first started out. I couldn't just prematurely foreclose on an idea because it seemed trendy at the time. I had to see, okay, is this going to be something I'm interested in 5 years? Is this going to be something that multiple markets are interested in? How is this actually going to rise to the level of broad appeal,
Yeah, and you hit it out right over the head. I think, first of all, you also want to say, do you want to be an entrepreneur? Do you want to be a business operator? And those are two different things. And then most people think, oh, I want to create this business. And then all of a sudden, 5 years later, I'm going to have all these people working for me and I'm going to right off to sunset, maybe sell a business. Before that, you have to have a culture, idea of building a brand, making sure that people understand the brand, people develop, and you have an idea on cost. I mean, there's so many different elements in it. But yeah, I mean, for me, I know the first couple of things that I didn't know I need to get help. And that's another thing is like some people start businesses and they think, well, I got to make it on my own. I got to do this and I got to do that. But there are so many businesses that are only in the business of helping other businesses. And when I started looking at like this problem and researching this problem, I just kind of came to the conclusion that if I want to scale, if I want to do something really, really big, I got to figure out who to delegate towards, what to delegate towards, and what to own myself.
Wow.
And that's so hard. It's never clear cut dry.
Yeah.
And the people who don't do well are the people who want to get 100% of the control, and because they're unwilling to give somebody else to do the same thing that they can do. That might be 80% of what you wanted to have happen, but is good enough and frees you up time to do something else. And that's just like a Warren Buffett. Think he works more hours than anyone else. He probably works pretty darn hard, but he has to delegate and accept, for better or worse, that there's going to be some people who are going to meet their expectations, and then some people who are not going to meet their expectations. And they're just taking the risk and managing that risk.
No, like what you're saying, it really hits home because the businesses that I've started when I was an entrepreneur, they were all, sole proprietorships. And I wanted nothing more than to be able to delegate. But when you say delegate, I see dollar signs because when I was doing it, the first time when I was 18, obviously I didn't have anything. And then when I did it again in my 30s and 40s, I absolutely wanted to have help. But it was so tricky because when you're starting a business, you are so financially vulnerable. And then people will come along and they'll say, oh, I can help you. But then they have, really steep fees. And if you don't know what you're getting into, you might be blindly signing a contract with somebody, or you might be thinking, oh, they see the same vision that I have, and we're just going to enter into some sort of friendship agreement. And then the work just doesn't end up getting done. And so delegation, it's the right answer on paper, but wow, is it tricky in reality?
You're always going to get it wrong. If you're either going to get someone who you thought won't do what they promise and they overproduce, they surprise you, or they go ahead and they produce less than what you expected. It's never you can expect yourself and other people. And if you're waiting for the right stars to align, where there's a perfect solution, where you can do this, or you can find the perfect person, say the right things that you can delegate to, it's never going to happen. And that's nothing I don't struggle with. I mean, I have probably about a half dozen people call me every single day who want to do marketing or whatever, have some kind of widget or whatever to solve some kind of solution. 0.001 chance that I see somebody and say, okay, I want to perhaps talk to you about this, whatever this case may be. And if you can get people to give you a recommendation or in your business or where you're at, I think that's the starting point. But even then, you're relying on someone's expectation, and they might be doing it still in a different time. So yeah, it's never, there's no silver bullet.
Right.
But get things in right. So my first, I have 5 things you really got to focus on trying to create a business. And the first one that we've been talking about is contractors, right? I'd say I probably have had half a dozen or more contractors who've done things for me in a number of different ways. Mostly great people. Get it in right. Okay, so there's a thing called statement of work. If it's not an arm's length transaction, like a product, where you're going to have someone explain to you in writing what they're going to deliver, when they're going to deliver it, what happens when they don't deliver it, what happens when they do deliver it, right? You're going to pay the name. Get it right. What I love, and I don't pick one or the other, but Fiverr is my go-to. Fiverr has a lot of people from a broad spectrum globally. Don't be afraid to look globally, who can do some good work. And so instead of just letting people call you, if teams of salespeople that they're paying and trying to go back into the cost that you're paying, you could save some if you go to them and, maybe they don't have a glossy, brochure or slick person calling you, but they do quality work. That's the way.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because it also lends itself to that idea of flexibility, that there is so many more roads that lead to that mountain summit. It's not just the well-trodden path. That's not everybody says to do it this way, so I'm going to fall into this groupthink mentality. I'm going to fall into the majority type of process. But really pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone when it comes to who would you consider on your team. And we are so fortunate to be in this, multi-networked stratosphere that is 2023, where we have the ability to connect, find, and develop individuals from every corner of the world. And one more point about this globalization is the translation software that is available to have these conversations. So don't even limit yourself if you don't share a common language. There are so many amazing ways to communicate with talent, to recruit talent, to mine that talent. And sometimes, people get locked in this mindset of, oh, I can only work with people in my zip code. Or perhaps it's tied to this belief, like if I go outside of my community, what will people think of me? But it's the end state, it's the end state of I can go outside my community, because guess what? When you do that, your community benefits, your community actually gets bigger. I love what you're talking about right now.
Yeah. And it's hit or miss, right? I mean, but you do the research, whether you go to Fiverr or Upwork, there's probably tons of other websites, or those are probably the two most well-known sites, but there's tons of places where you can find contractors. And more importantly, the ratings and satisfaction of them following through.
Yeah.
Second one is just basic, right? Legal contracts, understanding legal contracts, understanding the language in it. And, you could have gone to college and learned business contracts and law, but maybe most likely most people don't have a cursory business law class to kind of go through this. But if you don't, that means you should show someone who is legally available to draft and review these things for your benefit, right? Don't just sign things and don't know the impact. I hear people in the music industry, for example, and they say, well, I don't understand what's in my contract. I mean, did you read it? I mean, or like, did you pay someone that you can trust that isn't involved with your label or isn't involved, who doesn't have an interest in this deal or whatever the case may be, to actually review what you're signing? That's the critical piece, like making sure that whatever you're signing, whatever you're getting your recommendation on what you're signing, get an understanding from that from an objective.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have to jump in on that, right? So I'm a psychologist, and there are so many times when I see people making choices that aren't in their best interest because of pride. And this topic is so salient because sometimes people will not go the extra mile in reading that contract because they don't want to appear ignorant. They don't want to appear like they don't understand what's in it. They just sign it and say, yep, everything's fine. It looks good to me, because they don't want to lose face and they want to feel like they're playing at that level. But the reality is that you cannot you can't do your 20s over again. You can't do your 30s over again. The that you've developed as a person and the expertise that you've developed, the niche that you've cultivated to get you to the point where someone is even putting a contract in front of you. You have not gone to business school, right? Theoretically, if we're talking about a musician or an entertainer, like I love Zendaya, and she was talking about this too, right? So she reads everything. People who don't go through the process of reading everything, sometimes they're really hard on themselves because they think I should know this, but you absolutely should not. If you're in a niche and someone is trying to, enter into a bargain with you, don't feel bad that you don't know or understand half of it. Go get that person, that can help you with it. It's that scaffolding. It's building that community. You don't have to know it all, but that pride, wow, like it definitely trips people up, gets in the way of their success.
And where do you think that comes from?
Well, fear. I mean, the root of that pride experience is fear of rejection, fear of looking ignorant, fear of losing everything, and fear of missing out. And if you can look that in the eye and say, yeah, this is scary. I'm seeing a bunch of words that I don't understand, and myself included. I'm not saying I understand legalese. That's literally like a third language. But if you can look that in the eye and say, yeah, I am totally out of my depth, and that is okay. But my friend John isn't. And let me see if I can ask him to do me a solid and review this for me, or can I offer him some kind of compensation for 30 minutes of his time? What's his going rate? Nobody has to know that you've consulted an expert, right? It's not like you have to put that down anywhere. And that, being in a niche field, when you're looking at a contract, having the mental flexibility to call upon your network when you run into trouble, boy, that saves you. That absolutely saves you.
Yeah, I love my wife. Some part of your business might be government contracting. There's a lot of state local business money, state local government. The governments are the biggest spender in the country. But, I would not suppose that I'm anywhere close to understanding those rules like my wife would understand. And there's like whole bodies of knowledge that you have to know to understand that. In my lawyer, for example, I've been attorney, sometimes I'm like, no, I'm going to check. I'm going to ask them, and I'll pay, that because I know that there's expertise. I remember my grandfather, he got me buy my first car, and this is dating myself, but it wasn't really somewhat inexpensive car, my first car, and get in the dealership, and grandfather and I sit down, and the guy says, okay, you like that car? Great. This is what my offer is. And my grandfather said, look, can you do something better for that? And then he gave us a number. Me and him walked outside. He said, what do you think? Okay, maybe we can go down a little bit more. So we go back in there and we ask, okay, can we do something better? The guy goes, I got to talk to my manager. Let me go see something. Comes back. He says, okay, we can do that. And then me and my grandfather walk out again. I said, hey, can we get him down a little bit longer? And my grandfather said, look, wait, hold on. We're outside. We're talking. This is me and him at this point. He says, look, this guy is trying to make a living, right? I get it. You probably want to get the best price you possibly could, but, you might want to use them again at some point. We're in the middle of the desert. We never want to see each other again. You're probably going to try to get the best price ever because having a good relationship with them probably isn't really that important. But if you're going to buy 5, 10, 18 cars in your lifetime, whatever case may be, probably more than 5.
Right.
Depending on
for
what
sure.
Less than 10 now. You got to recognize that yes, you're going to pay something that you probably don't want to pay, right? It's not a cost or a revenue generator to pay for legal fees, right? You're paying for it to reduce the risk of something happening that's adverse to you. But you don't want to nickel and dime people, right? So like I said, you get what you pay for. Try to not burn bridges. And what do you think about that? I mean, psychologically, there's tons of classes about negotiations and that's really,
yeah.
What's your take?
Yeah. So it gets into this idea of posturing versus authenticity. So people are driven, especially in those vulnerable moments when you are negotiating or you're trying to make a good impression or you're trying to cultivate or manage an impression that you are projecting to your target audience. And some people, the thing they fail to do is read the room. They fail to understand what the other person across from them needs from the situation. They're totally absorbed. And there's no judgment here. It's like a human thing, but they're absorbed with how do they come across and what is their particular end game? What is their agenda? But they've actually missed 50% of the entire pie chart, which is what does the other party need to hear in order for us to get to the yes that you want? So when you're in those positions of negotiating, thank goodness for your grandpa, right? Because he had that total package perspective of, hey, we are in a system, we are in an ecosystem right now. So it's not just about what you want. It's not just the lowest deal. It's that this is relationship management, right? And this is a person that you might want to have a relationship with and make a good impression. And he came at it from this really lovely place of empathy, right? Like, this guy's trying to make a living. We don't want to nickel and dime him. We see where he is in the big process. It's not just you trying to get one over on this big dealership. It's that there's a person in between you and that vehicle, and that person has a stake in it as well. But the long game is this relationship that you can either help thrive and make a good long-term impression by giving a little bit, or, you can win the battle and lose the war.
Right. Yeah, there's a restaurant I used to go to, is where if we got crowded, because I, make sure I tip care of everybody, tip everybody, they'll find some place for me, and that comes from like long term and works both ways.
Yeah, it does.
The third thing I want to say is one of the most important things is digital marketing. Like, after COVID, this obviously it's pretty obvious to some, but not still actually to some, to most it's obvious, but to some it still isn't obvious. And one of the biggest things is that we used to do brand marketing differently, right? And the frustration is that today there is just a lot of money that you can throw out and put in a pile and let it match, and it can go, you can blow up, and you can lose a lot of money. But, thinking back to what we used to do, like I remember on a Saturday, we would hop in the car, me, my stepsister, and my stepmom, go down to the store. We probably pass a whole bunch of billboards, and there's a circular. We would go eat, go to the movies, and then we would go shopping. And between those points in time, all the people who really wanted to sell us something could just say, hey, here we are. This is what we want to do. Nowadays, I'm not sure, but what percentage of the time do you actually go to the store and find out what you're buying when you get there? Like, for me, nowadays, almost never. Almost never.
Yeah.
Like, I go online first. I do my research and I say, okay, I want to buy that, and then I'm going. It's none of this zigzagging, and it's less time for you to influence people in person. And so that's what a digital, presentation and marketing does. When it's not just to sell you things, but to let people know, hey, we're here to, when you do have this problem, come see us about that. If you don't understand that, that's a really big deal.
Yeah, I've noticed this a trend within the digital marketing space of big corporations trying to look small, trying to look like the mom and pop, because what you're talking about is loyalty, and you're talking about connectivity. And in the market space, I'm looking at TikTok, and I'm looking at Instagram, and I'm looking at, who's going viral, who's blowing up. And it's these unknowns, it's these everymans, it's these underdogs, it's the people who have a compelling story. It's the ones that you want to seek them out, buy their merchandise, and be a part of their process, and be a part of their product, and feel like you're connected to them. It's almost like a nostalgic recreation of those childhood experiences, the pre-internet good old days, if you will, of like when we would go to the store. And I didn't really have that growing up because I was a military kid and I moved around a lot. Like, I think I moved 37 times. And then the first time that I actually was in a place for more than 3 years, I was at the corner grocer introducing myself. I was so totally awkward, but I was so excited to actually have that connection with somebody who could know me on a personal level and ask me, like, my favorite question was like, do you want your usual? Like, that absolutely thrilled me. It totally thrilled me. But now, it's 2023 and we're in this digital market space and this digital marketplace. And that desire for connection, that hasn't just evolved away because the platforms have changed. And so people are still out there trying to build loyalty. Yeah.
Yes, it's a different channel. And you got to also have different channels with different people. If I wanted to sell, Marvel tickets, or if I wanted to buy, sell some kind of toy that could be an impulse buy. It was a low risk, low, reward type of product. Maybe I go to TikTok, right? Because hey, you have ton of young people. They have some discretionary income. Maybe they like movies, and you can kind of go and do some research, find that sort of thing. But I wouldn't be on there and sell you car insurance, right? Those probably not the best place to go to sell car insurance. Where on the flip side, if I wanted to sell those marble tickets, maybe I'd do that on Facebook. But I wonder how much my teenager will actually be on Facebook, when she becomes 18. But I don't see them being on that platform. But my grandmother is on there, my grandparents are on there, my grandmother, but so if you want to sell family or Father's Day ingrained cups or something like that in that demographic, that would be a good place to sell. So just understanding that, not all, you don't have to be on every single platform. You got to find a platform, maybe one or two that's important for your demographic, and stick with it.
Yeah. And I don't know if you're going to get to this or if this is part of the same conversation, but I feel like we can't avoid AI, and we can't avoid how things are expertly, precisely packaged and tailored to your specific interests. And it's not a person behind that connection. So your example of selling marble tickets, I know you, and I could say, oh, Manny's got marble tickets. But what if it was Manny, the robot, selling marble tickets because the AI detected that there was a demand for marble tickets. And so this entire thing was just a fabrication. And there have been more times than I care to admit when I have interacted with robots and had no idea, because the AI is so sophisticated. And you even have a virtual assistant, right? I carried on an email exchange with your virtual assistant. I was like, hey, who's your new employee? And you're like, that's a robot.
Yeah. And it's here. It's here. There's marketing platforms that are omni-channel, meaning that you go ahead and you create a marketing campaign, your branding, your content, and then where the message is most effectively heard is where the campaigns go in. And so, yeah, we're already here. And then some of the platforms already do a lot of it, so you have a Facebook where you can find clients that are similar to clients that you've had success with, only provide content or marketing pieces to those groups, and retargeting. People go to your website, they accept that you want to use cookies, and then they go back to Facebook. And what do you see? Well, I remember back in the day, no one understood that. And they're like, oh, maybe they're listening to us.
Yeah. Yeah.
I understand. So you're just on a website, you looked at your cookies, then Facebook said, all right, based on your cookies, we probably want to serve up this ads. That's what it all came down. It's been around forever. And so, having a digital brand message that's consistent, that isn't if you're an impulse seller or something, you're selling something like a product that's simple, that's easy to understand. Yeah, you can ask for the business in those emails. I've seen some in Facebook and that sort of thing. But if you're really buying something that requires a lot of trust, then you're going to not be just asking for the business right there, right? You're going to be providing insight, making yourself seen as a person that's someone who could provide a service to you that's successful. And so you got to be patient. It's a long game, and it's sometimes stressful. And then the other part of this is you're only one person. It's uncomfortable to hear this, but if you spend all your time on marketing, you could spend all your day on social media and find something that you think is interesting and share it. What are you doing to make the product that you're selling? Right? I mean, how much time are you putting into the product? How much time are you putting into it? You could do a hybrid of personalization, making it feel like it's personalized and still having that brand message come through that. And then scaling that with automation. And that's where most even big businesses or even small businesses are going now. So it's a hybrid of that personalized touch, maybe Twitter or one platform. I think Instagram is almost like a Truman Show. I'm not sure you remember that movie.
I do.
Where it was kind of like predictive, right? Because they're actors or in Truman's life, and you see them pause and they would just show this coffee and they talk about it. They break the fifth wall. They'd be talking about it, but that's no different than a celebrity talking about the new watch that they just bought on Instagram. And so that's almost like the Truman Show version of it. We want to have someone that's well known, showing people how to do something that's easier seen than explained.
Yeah. I mean, and this might make me sound like a dinosaur, but I have such a beef with automation. I know that it's necessary, but the last business that I started, I had hired a consultant and they were talking about important things such as scalability. But their version of scalability was to take a product that I had that was very bespoke. It was very tailored to individuals. And they were like shoving templates at me. And it was these bubblegum metrics of you have to basically spam people. You have to mine the data. You have to copy paste emails from every single person that you've ever had contact with and just like blast out this templated sales pitch. And I thought, absolutely not. Like, this is going to dilute my brand. This is going to make me seem cheap. You know, I'm trying to cut through the noise. And at that stage, I really felt like in order for me to cut through the noise, I couldn't automate that. But what I didn't understand was how many other things could be automated. Maybe I could have retained that personal touch when it comes to client communication. But there was a lot of other things that could have been automated, but those steps weren't laid out because this particular consultant was trying to automate comms because that was where they had the most success and the most traction was with these like pop-up ads. And that was just not the direction that I was trying to go. So I think, you know, for people that are just trying to stick a toe into this automation world, you can pick and choose what fits your brand and what fits your particular product or service. You don't have to, you know, just devolve into a spam bot, but there are things that you can use to make your life easier. And then, like you're saying, you know, spend that time that you get back on development of the product or service itself.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And just so, for example, talk about automation. Like most people understand that if they have something on their calendar, if they use Calendly, for example, to set up an appointment, they're probably going to get an automated message from the app saying that, hey, your appointment's going to come up in an hour and they're going to be able to, this person's going to talk to you. I don't think people are offended about that. It's really when they try to substitute a real meaty conversation with automation, right? I would never do that to say, hey, I think you want to go out and buy life insurance. And this one, those are more personal. Those are interactions you want to be personalized. Now, when it comes to marketing, reciprocity is really, really important, right? Now that those marketing scripts you were looking at said, all right, here's some information I think that is unique to this group of people, and it was catered to them, and it was beneficial to them. I don't think people will see that as spam. By the way, most people are not even going to read that. And so it is, you know, email marketing is here. It's here to stay. Sometimes it's annoying. I hate when people write RE and colon and then write their subject as if I was already having a conversation with them. That bugged me. Or every email I've sent, I've read, and maybe it's been sent out to people, 100 people at a time. But the messaging is, and that is still on brand. Like we could all say something 5 different times and be saying the very same core message within those 5 different iterations. And by the way, if you had to write a brand message 3 times a week to your audience, you're segmenting your audiences, how much time would it take you to do that by hand? And then you spend all that time doing that, and 5 to 10% of people actually open it. So you can get, like, going back to the 800% rule. Like if I wanted to get 100% best catered to me, catered to my brand message for that speaks from me, and I spend all my attention on every single one of those emails, I would get almost nothing else done. I would spend a whole bunch of time thinking, oh, does this sound right? Is this, and then And then I get a couple emails out, and then 5% of or 10% of the people actually even see the email. And then 1% of all those people who actually got it actually respond. And so if you can get someone who can help you get almost there, close to it, and then you tweak it a little bit so it sounds in your voice, and maybe you don't do this one or you do that campaign, and it's 80% of what you would have already said, you're going to be saving so much more time. And then 20% isn't really going to matter, because you're not, like, for example, I want to make a hamburger, right? I could probably make a better hamburger than McDonald's. I think most people can if they had the time. But could you make 1 billion hamburgers for profit? Could you make 1 billion? Now, that's what you need to make 1 billion hamburgers for profit that people want to buy is entirely different than saying you want to make the best hamburger. So it's, and I think cheap inequality, I would just say, understand what you're asking and what the market is for what you're doing and what's the most important thing, most important communication style for the people you're talking to.
Yeah. And that's absolutely brilliant. I mean, you said so many things that are quotable. I feel like I want to take notes while you're talking.
Yeah. And, another part, second to last thing is scalability. You can imagine your service model from the beginning with clarity. I think every business owner has this idea. Okay, 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, 5 years, this is what you're going to do. But then you learn a little bit about your clients, what you're able to do. And then you realize that maybe what you wanted to do isn't what your clients want you to do. Right. Or maybe it takes a lot more time and energy than you thought was going to be possible. So you have to think, do you want to have a lifestyle type of organization where you're a business operator, where you have to be there every single day? You have no room for you to work on the business except, in the business and just managing, your relationships with your clients, but not really looking at strategic issues? Or do you want to have a business where other people can work under you, have a lifestyle, and then grow that into teams and to sort of bigger type of enterprise? And it's no wrong answer to that. I mean, if you don't really want to manage people, don't manage people. Just, you're going to learn really quick that people are hard to manage. And if you don't your heart's not into it, you'll feel well.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's part of what contributes to the allure of going into business for yourself is people's experiences with either the challenges of managing others or the challenges of being managed themselves. And the details that you're talking about are so critically important to understand, and that they change. You might be able to start out with a very small model, and that can change over time into something that is more scalable. So yeah, I think, what you're saying, it really hits home.
And the other part of this is people always talk about generations, this generation, that. It's every woman is her mother's daughter, right? And so I think if our parents had the same possibilities and interests, they would react to the job market the way this new generation is reacting to the job market. It's nothing different. People want the most amount of money for the least amount of risk, least amount of work. That's human nature, right? And so you got to provide if you're going the enterprise route, you got to provide what people are requesting. They want to be in meaningful jobs. They're making a difference. We're doing work with an organization that shares their values and provides them with remuneration. You can't expect that people are just going to say, all right, for $15 or $30 or $1 million, that they're going to know what's great for the organization, manage themselves, be all in it to create some profit to you where you're not working as hard as they are. And so I think that realm is gone. You're working, if you're an owner, you got to be working. You got to be working really, really hard. You better be the hardest working person if they're building equity for you. And, so it's not one of these things where 100 years ago or 150 years ago, no one had any kind of say. You work in the factory 12 hours a day. We're never going back. And so you got to realize you got to either develop the people you want to work speak for your brand and speak through that value, through their experience with you, because you can't fake it.
Yeah. Yeah. Powerful point.
Yeah. And the last thing is partnership agreements, right? If you're working with someone to start a business, you'll be surprised how many people I know who started a business, meaningful amounts of money, put it together, shook it up, created a business, and then didn't have any kind of written agreement about who's responsible for taxes, whose percentage of earnings they need to be distributed, when those earnings are going to be distributed, how much is going to be reinvested in the business, how do you manage conflicts, how do you manage additional future contributions? Those are things that you don't want to just figure out why you stumble across them. Another thing is, like, if you pass away, like, who gets what? You want to be a partner with your partner's spouse, right? And so having a partnership agreement doesn't have to be really complicated. It has to be simple. And there's tons of platforms online that allow you to create legal documents where you can just find a lawyer that helps you make one. But yeah, definitely one of the top 5 things you need to have.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, as you're talking, I'm thinking back to all the times that would have been really good to have, because I had been very much a go it alone type person in my endeavors. And there was so many obstacles that would have been better solved with more than one brain looking at the problem. And so, if you do have the good fortune to have people who share your vision and are supporting your platform and helping you grow and helping you thrive, that's your equity. Those people that are in your circle, that are around you, that's what you invest in, because those individuals, you just can't manufacture them. You can't surge people into those roles. It's amazing when they show up, and having the foresight and the situational awareness to say, oh my gosh, this person's here to stay. They are invested in the long haul. They're somebody that I'm having thoughts about legacy when I'm talking to this person. Those are the keepers. And, if you don't have those people around you, sometimes it's because you're too focused on that end state, and you might need to take a step back and say, what am I really doing? What am I really trying to do? And who else would be value added in this process? What part of this can I share? Because it's not just about the product. When you're a sole proprietor, or when you're an entrepreneur, you're starting a business for the first time, it's not just about you. You literally cannot do it all by yourself. It's a bit delusional to think that you can. And I was part of that. I thought that I could do it by myself. And I burned out. I gave everything, every minute of the day for years. And at the end of it, I wasn't satisfied, because I could have gone farther, and I could have gone farther faster if I would have engaged with other people and opened up my process to more collaborative efforts. So yeah, I think these words are really important for people who are just starting out.
And you have a lot of experience too with the mentality, the idea of people's perceptions of themselves through their work. And, what do you think is driving success? Well, how do you think that's changed over generations?
I think that it's a long-term mentality. I think a lot of people are attracted to the shiny object. They're attracted to the trend. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you're trying to build something sustainable, if you're trying to live that dream of retiring at some point in comfort, then you have to think bigger than just yourself and just this one niche, this little wedge that you're carving out for yourself, or this one comment, this one voice, this one narrative that you're trying to project into the world, or this one product. If you want something that is going to be walking alongside you through your life, whether it's a product or a service or a trend mentality, that in terms of that you are contributing to a long-term trend, right? If like I've mentioned AI before, if you're on that market, if you're looking at how am I going to do something that's going to make AI better, that is a long-term thing. So in terms of what can really help the mentality driven towards success, it's having that long-term mindset, and then also really recognizing what success means for you and having the flexibility to redefine it periodically. because the vision of success and the definition of success, it is morphic. It changes over time. It's not static. And in order to be an agile person within any market space, you have to have a certain degree of agility so that you don't get too fixated on what you defined as success at 21 is not how you define success at 31, and it's not how you define success at 41. And so those are the points that I think really help people survive long-term in any kind of endeavor, is always redefining that success point for yourself and celebrating when you reach it. And that's like probably my last point on that, is you have to celebrate those successes when they come, instead of always reaching for the next brass ring, but taking time to experience that moment really mindfully and living in that gratitude of, yeah, I've made it. This is what 21-year-old me would have been throwing hands about. Is so happy versus this is what 31-year-old me would have been popping corks over. Right. So being able to actually celebrate and recognize those moments is also part of that long-term success, I think.
Yeah, but you can make as much money as you want and not be happy. I've seen miserable millionaires. If you're miserable before you became a millionaire, you might be happy for 6 months, a year after that happens. If you're comparing yourself to other people, you're going to be comparing yourself to other millionaires.
Yeah.
You're going to be realizing something else that you.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it's
right. Like, oh, I should have reached that milestone sooner.
Yeah.
That's the thinking trap I've seen people fall into. Like they actually get there to where they want to be, and they can't enjoy it because then they get into the self-critical space of, well, why didn't I do this 10 years ago? Right? They're just like, are you kidding me? Those are my clients. It's individuals that are not able to appreciate where they've arrived, because as soon as they get there, they instantly go into that comparison mode. And it's usually with some imaginary audience, or it's with some version of their self that never existed, or it's with people who have not walked the same path and maybe got to where that person defined success at earlier. And they sabotage all the time. So, you can be your own worst enemy, even when you've supposedly won the whole thing.
That's so deep. That's really deep. I'm gonna let you have the last word. I love this conversation. I feel like we can talk for hours on this, and maybe do it some other time.
Yeah.
But there you have it, folks. A lot of information. Say for most people, most business owners, 5 blind areas, most important areas I think understand very, very well. It's how to manage contractors. Secondly, how to understand legal contracts, find someone who can. Third one is digital marketing. It's here to stay, no matter what type of business you're in, service or product. The fourth thing is understanding ways you're going to be scalable, whether or not that's something you want to have. You have to do up front to do that. And the last one is understanding partnership agreements and the importance of those if you want to have someone that's partnering with you in your business. So I'll say that again. This was awesome. Appreciate everyone's time and listening with us. And until next time, I'll see you then. See you when I see you.
Bye.
The content presented and discussed is purely intended to be general and educational in nature and should not be construed as specifically tailored investment, financial planning, tax, legal, psychological diagnosis, or other professional advice. Any data cited is valid as of the date of presentation, but please know that such data are frequently subject to change. Any investment performance referenced is purely past performance, which is no guarantee of any future performance. Nothing contained in this course should be construed as an offer to sell, a solicitation of an offer to buy, or a recommendation of any security or other financial product or investment strategy. All investment, tax, and financial planning strategies involve risk that you should be prepared to bear. Investment, financial planning, tax, legal, and other professional advice is specific to each individual and entity, and you are highly encouraged to consult with professionals of your choosing before taking any action based on the contents presented or discussed herein.